Hello everyone and welcome to the webinar. This is Tracy Berardi speaking, Program Manager of the Cloud Standards Customer Council. Folks are joining now, but I imagine the folks that are on the line, you've heard the news that we are transitioning the Cloud Standards Customer Council into the new Cloud Working Group at OMG. So thanks for logging in today as we get together to discuss this. And this is Tracy, and I'm joined by Claude Boudoir, who's on the CSCC Steering Committee. Many of you know Claude and have worked with him on the CSCC's papers, or have at least heard his voice on these webinars that we do. Most recently, Claude led the revision of the Migrating Applications to Public Cloud Services white paper. V2 was published back in March. And Claude has been involved in the OMG and its programs for many years. How many years, Claude, actually? Because I was wondering and I wasn't quite sure.
Oh, God. About 25 years now.
There you go. And so Claude is going to chair the Cloud Working Group as we get this off the ground. So the purpose and agenda for today, we're going to explain how you can get involved and stay involved. That's really our main focus. The CSCC members are invited to become participants of the Cloud Working Group. And essentially, our goals remain the same, and procedures are very similar. This is still an open and collaborative process for publishing discussion papers, and we'll be working within the ecosystem of the IT standards community. So I'll give a brief history of the CSCC and then take some time to introduce the OMG in more detail. OMG is a not-for-profit IT standards development organization headquartered just outside of Boston, Massachusetts. OMG launched the CSCC 7 years ago as a community of practice, and we're now turning the program into more of our traditional working group model. So I'll explain the structure of OMG standards developing task forces, working groups, and the community sort of under this OMG umbrella. And then Claude will explain the Cloud Working Group's operations, what our roadmap looks like over the next few months, and then answers to some anticipated FAQs. We expect to present for about 40 minutes, and so we'll leave some time at the end for more Q&A, so you're welcome to submit your questions at any time, and we'll chat. So the CSCC was launched in 2011 by the OMG, just as cloud computing was really starting to take root. And our charter has been to deliver vendor-neutral guidance on important considerations for cloud computing adoption in the form of white papers and reference architectures to help our members adopt cloud computing and to inform our liaison SDOs, standards development organizations, and our partners in the open source communities about customer requirements, use cases, to promote open standards-based cloud computing. And through our working groups, we've published 28 deliverables that have been posted to the website. And as we transition the CSCC to a working group model, all of our members are invited to become participants. The papers are moving over to the OMG website as is, and will retain their branding as CSCC documents until they're version updated according to our new roadmap. So we'll continue to revise the papers and publish new papers, and Claude will talk more about that momentarily. So a little background on our parent organization, the OMG, and I'm here at OMG headquarters. We're in Needham, outside of Boston. The OMG is a standards development organization with nearly 30 years of history in supporting standards development in communities of practice like the CSCC. And member companies that join participate in various committees, task forces, and working groups. And OMG members have published standards for middleware, software and system modeling, business process modeling, ontologies, and more. So our work here in cloud computing is really crucial, especially with all these cloud-first policies now, and as government and industry organizations involved in sourcing and new technology and modernization requirements. And our members have been developing standards in over a dozen or 24 verticals at this point. There are domain task forces at OMG for healthcare, finance, government, robotics, space, and others. The retail domain task force and the workplace benefits task force, these are brand new, actually. OMG recently partnered with the National Retail Federation to take on retail technology standards, and with an organization called LIMRA to work on specifications for insurance, retirement, and other workplace-related benefits. So these task forces have websites on omg.org. So for example, if you pulled up omg.org/healthcare, you'll find the home page of the healthcare domain task force, and this page includes information on the task force chairs, the published specifications, and work in progress. So if you were interested in becoming more involved in OMG and in corporate membership, you might find a lot of different areas to get involved in. Now, the core of OMG is its standardization process. How does this work? I'll give you a really quick tour because I think you'll find this helpful. If you take a look at the fourth row or branch on this tree, the architecture board at OMG sits alongside the technical committees. There's a platform technical committee and a domain technical committee. And the architecture board establishes the essential requirements for RFPs, or requests for proposals, and oversees the technical consistency of OMG specifications. Now, an RFP is an explicit request to OMG members to submit a proposal for a spec meeting requirements that are stated in the RFP. So when an RFP is issued and publicized to the community, we're seeking submissions, for a new technology specification. And it's the technical committees that have the power to issue RFPs in their domain and to make technology specification adoptions through a member voting process. And then these decisions are blessed, so to speak, by the architecture board and the OMG board of directors. There's also the concept of RFIs and RFCs. A request for information, or RFI, can be issued ahead of an RFP to help inform development of the RFP. The RFI solicits feedback to help a technical committee subgroup develop its roadmap or gather requirements ahead of the specification. An RFC, or request for comment, this is a slightly different path. This is when spec documentation exists and can go forward through the voting process, and we can sort of bypass RFP and RFI because it exists and is ready. So there's different paths here, but this is really the basic structure across, horizontally and vertically that we operate and introduce specs and vote and get them approved for publication through the OMG. You'll see that each technical committee or platform or domain has task forces and special interest groups underneath it. So each task force is chartered to meet a specific goal and to propose standards in its segment. So back to healthcare again as an example. That team develops standards that can improve the quality of healthcare and reduce costs through interoperability technologies. So task forces and SIGs are standards producing groups. Now, working groups at OMG, and we have plenty of them and can introduce them All the time. The working groups do not necessarily develop standards. Working groups can be used to incubate ideas, to publish discussion papers, and things of that nature. So the new cloud working group at OMG is home under the MARS task force. You'll see that MARS is under the Platform Technology Committee. MARS stands for Middleware and Related Services. So when we update the CSCC's papers or introduce a new work product, the papers will be reviewed by MARS and then issued for publication as formal OMG documents. So similar, but this is our new home, and just wanted to provide some background so you can see. Please reach out if you're interested in learning more about the OMG ecosystem in that regard. Here I've just pulled out some sample standards. There's many of them. You might recognize some of these. UAF, or the Unified Architecture Framework, under Architecture Frameworks is the new incarnation of the Unified Profile for DODAF and MODAF, developed with support from the U.S. Department of Defense and UK Ministry of Defense. Under middleware and related services, there are standards like DDS, Data Distribution Service, which is increasingly popular for IoT and mission-critical environments. And all of these standards through the OMG are free and open to access at omg.org/spec. There's also vendor directories for tool providers and certification exams, some offshoot offerings. Now, in addition to this core, the standards process, the OMG launches these programs like the CSCC. So the CSCC has operated here from 2011 to 2018, and we've really built up quite a library now, which is why we're transitioning and bringing this work a little bit more closer. But there's two other big programs. CISC, the Consortium for IT Software Quality, which I do a lot of work for as well. Executive Director is Dr. Bill Curtis, and CISC develops automated source code measures for measuring software, software size, software quality, technical debt. The Industrial Internet Consortium is a membership organization where members work together on industry use cases and test beds for real-world applications of IoT in the industrial space. They also publish reference architectures and frameworks. But I say this because the concept behind these programs and the goal that OMG has had in mind as we launch them is that members can take standards requirements to SDOs like OMG, as well as other organizations, to create new standards. And then, of course, tools and industries then build upon the standards and open things up in terms of offerings for customers. So now, as we bring the work of the CSCC closer to the core of OMG, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Claude, who'll discuss the working group operations and some of the next steps. And hi, Claude. Thanks.
Hey, Tracy. Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here to explain to you what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. So for the person who asked if we had a problem with freezing screens and the sound disappearing, from my end, as a co-presenter, I didn't see any serious glitches here, sometimes just a brief delay. So unfortunately, I suspect that the problem is on your end. And if anyone else has had a systematic problem, please put it in the questions. But yeah, this seems to be working fine, at least as far as Bright Talk is concerned and the other people. So we basically scheduled this webinar in order to explain the transition to existing members of the Cloud Standards Customer Council. But those of you who have joined the conference and were not a member, a part of the CSCC, we will still try to present this in a way that explains to you how we're going to be operating without requiring prior prior knowledge of the way things were working. So we had a website called cloud-council.org. It is now going to be replaced by the cloud pages on the OMG website. So this is going to be live in a few days, actually, by next Monday. The URL will be www.omg.org/cloud. If you have bookmarked cloud-council.org, or you start typing cloud in your browser address bar and it auto-completes from your history to cloud-council.org, no worries. We're going to put in place an automatic redirection, so you'll end up in the right place. If you are a member of the CSCC, basically just having registered and being on the mailing list and on our list of members, you don't have to do anything. You will become an OMG working group participant, specifically in the OMG Cloud Working Group. This will happen automatically, and membership in OMG working groups does not require a payment. It's only membership in bodies that give you a right to vote and to submit standards or work on requests for proposals for specifications. That requires a membership in the OMG, but just being on a working group doesn't. So you're not going to receive suddenly a bill due to the transition. Your email subscription will continue to work, so you will continue to receive the same announcements, especially every time we start working on a new effort and we ask for contributors to a new paper or to a revised paper. Then you will receive the same calls for contributions. One thing that is going to change, and I hope it's an improvement, the CSCC had a couple of face-to-face meetings at the beginning where it was created in 2011, maybe 2012, and then it moved totally to remote participation, so conference calls, emails, shared documents, etc. I am planning to reschedule again some face-to-face meetings now that the effort is going to be directly under the umbrella of the OMG. That gives us a chance to put a cloud working group meeting on the agenda of CSCC meetings, and we will start that at the next meeting, which is the last week of September in Ottawa, Canada. So probably on Tuesday, the 25th of September, the date is not 100% firm yet. We will probably have a half-day cloud working group meeting where we will discuss the transition, the roadmap, and list people in efforts to continue with some of our deliverables. Of course, if you don't like all of this, but we will beg you to reconsider, but you are, of course, at any time willing to leave the group. You just have to contact Tracy, who you heard before, tracy@omg.org, and she'll regretfully, with tears in her eyes, remove you from the list if you so wish. But really, you are encouraged to participate in all our initiatives within the framework of the OMG, and the changes are going to be minor. I can already answer a question that appeared in the question list. Once the new website is live on July 23rd, will the CSCC bear the same logo design as it is now in the new domain? No, it will be a new logo showing the OMG as the base logo. We're going to retire the old CSCC logo since it refers explicitly to the name. And the papers are, as I will explain, will continue to exist with their old logo and their old copyright notice, etc., until they get to be revised. We didn't want to have to do a mass update for all the papers. So if you were to participate in standards task forces, vote on standards, you would need to be an OMG member. But if you just want to continue to be part of the cloud working group, the new name, you don't have to do anything. And you can check out all the resources on the public part of the OMG website, omg.org. And we'll create, again, we've already created a cloud web page, which is going to be turned live next Monday. So here is the preview. I know it's an eye chart, but it's a preview of of the website that's going to be available on Monday. Currently, the logo says Cloud Standards Customer Council is now the OMG Cloud Working Group, so it's sort of a mixed logo, a mixed image that contains both logos, but that's going to be changing more completely in the future. Here's some of the parts of the website. We're going to have a tab or a link to all the resources, all the documents. So that'll contain a link to all the deliverables we've created before. Again, the papers themselves are not going to be changed, but they will be accessible from this new website, and they will still be accessible from the old CSCC website. So the website should redirect, number one, but if you have bookmarked the links to the PDF of the old papers, those links will also redirect to the new location of the papers. We're trying to really make everything transparent. So those of you who are asking questions now about the links to paper, the hyperlinks you've used in your resumes, etc., we're really being conscious of that and trying to make sure that none of that information leads to a 404 error. And if by mistake we forgot something, please let us know and we'll do our best to fix it. So there will be a link to the roadmap of the group, including the expected new papers or revisions of old papers that we're going to be working on. And there will be, again, the links to all the past events, including all the recordings of the Bright Talk webinars we gave in the past about various papers. As you know, every time the CSCC has released a new white paper, we usually had a webinar to present it. Those have been archived through Bright Talk, and we provide a list of those so that people can listen to the replays or watch the replays. This list will also be rehosted, and the links will remain the same. The Bright Talk, the specific CSCC Bright Talk channel will be closed and replaced by the OMG Bright Talk channel, but all the recordings will still be available.
Claude, it's Tracy, if I may, while you're there, because as you say, our Bright Talk channel itself is coming down, but OMG has a channel. We also, what we've done, because we've done a ton of webinars, we've posted them as well to YouTube, and we're keeping the CSCC's YouTube channel, renaming it to OMG Cloud Working Group. So when you go to the events page here on the site, there's links to download the PDF from the presentation, and then there's links to go view our videos on YouTube. So those are still there. And then about the papers, because that's probably one of the biggest concerns. In terms of the redirects, we're making sure that, because each paper has its own landing page right now, right under the Resource Hub. So the .htm pages are pointing to its new .htm, and then the PDF files themselves are also pointing to the new, .htm page on the OMG site. So we really have paid very, very close attention, and I'm confident that these links are going to work. But of course, ping me if you see any issues. But we got that covered. I think we're in good shape. So.
Thanks, Tracy, for the clarification. Yes, so Tracy and I have been discussing this transition for months now. We sort of agreed on the principles of the transition back in March, and in the intervening time, we've had many discussions about what needed to be preserved to make sure that for all of you, the transition would be painless. We hope we didn't forget anything. In case we did, let us know, and we'll really fix it. So I am taking over the initial chairing of the working group, basically because I was in the wrong place at the wrong time, I guess, and I didn't say no. What I mean by that is I've been on the steering committee of the CSCC for a while. Some other people who've been very active there are sort of going to continue to participate in some of the work, but they have to get back a bit into the background because their organizations is asking them to do some other work. Interesting concept. And so I volunteered to sort of be the flag bearer for a while, but this is not a life sentence for me. At least I hope not. So we certainly can have other co-chairs in the process, or co-leaders, and any of you who are interested in taking on that role, which has to do with managing the roadmap, organizing the meetings, and coordinating with the rest of OMG staff to make things happen. You are welcome to contact me or to contact Tracy to find more details. The discussion paper process, which of course the discussion papers, so what we used to call the white papers at the CSCC, these are the main deliverables of what we've been doing. At OMG, we don't call them white papers for historical reasons. We call them discussion papers. Same difference, that doesn't mean anything different in terms of content. It's just a different name. So there is a process for discussion papers at OMG, and it is not any more cumbersome than what we used to do at CSCC. Actually, at the CSCC, we had a fairly formal process of successive drafts and internal drafts, external drafts, etc. We're going to basically continue to use the same process because it was a good process. It's actually almost more defined than the general OMG discussion paper process. On the other hand, before the OMG publishes a paper, it needs to go to a formal vote of a sponsoring task force. So we've established a good communication channel with the middleware and related services task force, and they will take our deliverables, review them, and approve them for publication. The only thing they request that is a little bit different is because the work is now going to be done under the auspices of the OMG, which is a standards defining organization, the topic of what is the potential impact of a discussion in terms of standardization, that topic is now in scope. It wasn't so much in scope of a CSCC discussion paper. The CSCC discussion paper might say, hey, in order to have better security or to have better SLAs or to have a better understanding of platforms, there might be a benefit in having such and such standard, but obviously the CSCC was not empowered to actually work on the standard itself. Now that we're going to be part of the OMG, we could directly tell a body in the OMG, hey, we really recommend that such or such task force establish a standard in this respect. So in a sense, instead of just defining the problem and alerting our audience to the fact that a certain issue or opportunity or need exists, we can actually now have a little bit more power, not by doing a standard ourselves, first of all, because it's a huge amount of work, and secondly, because a working group cannot do a standard according to OMG policies and procedures, only a task force can, but we'll have a direct connection to those task forces that can potentially help resolve a need by creating a standard. The CWG members, that is you people, new members of the Cloud Working Group, you're going to be the ones, as usual, working on the paper. The CWG chair or chairs, as being responsible for the roadmap, we will establish a calendar, a quarterly calendar like we used to do, and say, okay, we'd like to work on such and such paper. We'll initiate the call for contributions. We'll steer the work of whatever working group sub-working group assembles in order to work on the paper. And if you have suggestions for new papers, then you need to email cloud-chair@omg.org. These emails will come to me. The reason for an alias, Cloud Chair, is obviously so that the message will keep going to the right person, even if the chairmanship changes. And they'll also be copied to Tracy so that she can keep me honest and prevent me from forgetting some of my action items. And yes, to respond to the questioner, OMG membership is by companies, but in a working group, it's less important since there's not a fee to pay. We really don't care as much whether someone who is in the working group is a person or a company. Formally, you'll be identified with your company, not as an individual. However, again, when you come to work or you contribute, we will typically acknowledge you in the list of authors with your name and your company, but you can really tell us how you want to be identified. And individual contributors, including self-employed people, independent consultants, etc., are totally welcome to participate and to name their company if they so desire. There's no limitation there, since you don't need to be a member of the OMG to participate. Once we issue a call for participation in a new document, and we enlist some people to participate in that, we will, as we used to, we will typically load, or we'll use Google Docs as a way to do collaborative authoring, because it's a tool that everyone knows, everyone can use it, it's free, and it keeps tracks of versions. And even if you mess up something, it's easy to revert to the previous version. Once all that is done, then the paper is moved into a more formal publication process. It becomes a Word document and ultimately a PDF. There will be successive drafts that will be circulated internally to that group, and then an external draft, quote unquote, that will be sent to all the participants in the Cloud Working Group, which are something like 700 or 800 people right now, so that anyone can participate and provide feedback. And then what we will do is, at the following quarterly meeting of the MARS Task Force, the Middleware and Related Services Task Force, we will officially, if you want, release the draft paper to the task force and ask them to vote on it. And people will review the paper if they have the time, and then they will formally vote during a Mars Task Force meeting to release the paper. And we will follow the same process for legacy CSCC papers when the time comes to revise them. So the papers that already exist stay the way they are. As soon as we go through a revision, which we try to do approximately every 3 years, then we will change the cover page, change the copyright notice, and the footers, etc., and make it an OMG paper, but only at the time we revise it in order to minimize the amount of work. So the library of papers, which currently is 28 papers, is going to 27 or 28, will contain for several years a mix of logos, but we didn't really want to go through the effort of converting them. At some point, if we have 5 or 6 papers that remain and don't seem to require a revision, we might change them, but we don't want to create work for the sake of creating work. I clicked twice, or maybe we both clicked at the same time. So speaking of that, in the upcoming roadmap, we have one paper that we said we would do in the third quarter, and the third quarter, of course, is already started. It's the update to the Practical Guide to Cloud Service Agreements. So I think that one is going to go from version 2 to version 3, if I'm not mistaken. So hopefully the changes are not enormous, but people who are interested in cloud service agreements and SLAs, this is going to be your time to, and especially, of course, the people who participated in the previous versions. And I was, I think, very involved in that one. I may even have led the last revision, so I'm going to have to issue a call to get people to review this guide and suggest changes. The technologies, the best practices, the customer experience may have evolved to where we need to make some changes in this guide. And anyone on this call, anyone on the working group can certainly submit to me already suggestions for how the guide should evolve to its new version. And of course, if you do that, since no good deed goes unpunished, you will be sort of roped in to participate in the effort to update the guide. But we welcome and we encourage your contributions. In Q4, so October to December, there is a companion paper to this Practical Guide to CSAs, which is called Public CSAs, What to Expect and What to Negotiate. It's a deeper dive into what should you find and not find in cloud service agreements. So we want to update that one too. I think it's also a change from version 2 to version 3. I don't remember right now. So we'll have a call for contributions probably end of September, early October. It might be the same victims who are called on to participate in those two papers. We sort of have a list of usual suspects for these two papers, but again, new contributions are absolutely invited. And at dates to be determined, we need to update the Practical Guide to Cloud Management Platforms because it's now about 3 years old. And we also have a Practical Guide to Platform as a Service that has also reached a point where we need to revise it. But we don't have a firm date for that. It would be good to do maybe one of those also in Q4 and then the next one in Q1 of 2019. But you know, you're all volunteers in this effort. You'll have limits on your time, so we'll do what we can do. But we'll try to push along for these. We've received several suggestions for new papers. We have 3 of them in the queue right now. And one is a paper on containers, obviously a key topic. And there's probably some specialists of Kubernetes and things like that on call who would be more than qualified to write a paper explaining to cloud users why containers, what containers are, how to use containers, how to orchestrate the deployment of containers, etc., without necessarily referring to a specific technology like Kubernetes, but whatever considerations in the use of containers and their deployment that would provide a valuable input to our members. Someone wanted to also suggest a reference architecture for AI in the cloud. There's certainly a lot of work on machine learning and deep learning that is typically done with resources in the cloud, and that requires a whole stack of AI capabilities The OMG is actually interested in doing work in the area of AI standardization, and AI standardization is not about standardizing the AI algorithms because that would stifle innovation. It's more about the infrastructure and the support for AI components to be articulated together. So a reference architecture might be a very good first step for that. And there was also a suggestion to do a paper on the resilience reference architecture. And I don't know the details about that, but we have some emails in our folders where people have said, this is what I'd like to do. So we'll bring these ideas forward at some point and start the discussion about those. And we'll probably review those ideas at the Ottawa meeting. But if you can't make it, you will still be involved in the discussions through email. So we've already taken one volunteer, my ex-colleague Reddy from Schlumberger wants to be involved in the upcoming publications. So Reddy, thank you for being the first volunteer. We'll definitely get you involved. So we're going to move to a couple of FAQs, and then I'll open it to more questions. So why the transition? Well, because we've reached a certain level of maturity in the work of the CSCC, and also, frankly, because some people have been giving us a lot of time and resources over the last 7 years, and they cannot maintain the level of energy from just a few companies that was required during the initial years of the CSCC. Now that we've reached a certain cruise regime of having a fairly large number of papers, updating them on a regular basis, etc., it was felt that it was time to move this process under the auspices of the OMG, which brings a certain number of benefits, including being able to use some time from the OMG staff, using the OMG publication process, using the OMG task forces for review and approval. So instead of having a separate set of procedures at the CSCC, it was sort of simplification to bring all that under the OMG with the agreement of all the people who had led the effort before at the CSCC. What happens to the deliverables? They will all still be available for download, no change in availability. They will be transferred to the CWG website, but all the links will be redirected. The webinars, Tracy mentioned it before, all the webinars we've done, we started doing those. There's a library of them from the past 18 months. We didn't have the Bright Talk channel at the beginning of the CSCC, but OMG, IIC, CISQ, and CSCC have been using very successfully the Bright Talk platform we're using today. So the archive is preserved, and there will be new events by the CWG, including this one, because OMG has access to Bright Talk also and has been using it. So we'll continue to use Bright Talk. It just won't be the same channel. And we will add some face-to-face meetings as applicable. Next FAQ, is there a membership fee? No. Participation in the working group is free. Now, if you were to move over to some of the other OMG efforts that define standards, then your company would have to be a member. But that's for a different level of working. There is not a steering committee anymore. The CSCC steering committee is effectively disbanded. However, all the members of the old steering committee who are willing to participate in leading the working group are perfectly welcome. So we're not telling everyone to go away. It's not like you're fired. No, it's nothing at all like that. All the people who have participated so far have done a tremendous job. We welcome their continued participation. It's just that I'm taking the lead because I'm the one who basically has made a commitment to it. Some of the other people have to go and do some work in other areas, but they can still participate, absolutely. So there's no closing of the door to anyone who's been involved. The social media channels are all being renamed, but will continue to exist. So we have a LinkedIn group with a lot of people in it, and 700 and something. So it will continue to exist. We're just renaming it. The YouTube channel is going to be renamed, and it is one good way to get access to all the old webinar recordings. And we have accounts on Twitter, Facebook, SlideShare, and BrightTalk. Those will be closed because creating new OMG Cloud Working Group accounts would sort of overlap with the existing OMG social channel. So basically the OMG social channels that already exist will replace the CSCC accounts, but will now carry some announcements and some activities related to the CSCC. It'll just be under a new name. And there will be some announcement made on all of these channels, probably repeatedly, to invite you to follow the new accounts. And we're not going to rashly close them. We'll just try to provide a smooth transition. So I think this is the end of the FAQs. So here's the new CWG website, including a link to join it. The cloud chair, that's me, with copy to Tracy, is cloud-chair@omg.org. And on the About page of the OMG website, you can see who's the staff and learn more about the wonderful people in Needham, Massachusetts, starting with Tracy. So that's the links. And so let's look at the questions. Someone said, thanks, Tracy and Claude. The CSCC process was very effective. Looking forward to contributing to the great work. Mark me as a second volunteer. So that's from Prasad. Thank you, Prasad. It was a pleasure to work with you in the past. You've contributed very well. I'm looking forward to you continuing to do that. Again, yes, the CSCC process, I think, worked very fine, and we're absolutely committed to maintaining the strengths of that process and then leveraging the OMG ecosystem of task forces and procedures and publication mechanisms to possibly even reinforce that process. There's a comment about something strikes again, and I have no clue what that means in the question. So,
I'm
do you
not
know
sure
what that?
either. I'd help you out.
Okay, so if the person who said that wants to rephrase their question in a way that that allows me to respond to it, I'll be happy to do that. Right now, I do not understand your question. Sorry. Hey, Carolyn, thank you for working on the papers. It's great to see that you're on board. Tracy is taking notes about the people who are speaking up right now. Already, Prasad, Carolyn, but anyone else, feel free to send a message to either tracy@omg.org or cloud-chair@omg.org. Actually, I prefer if you use the cloud-chair address for this, because that way Tracy and I will see it, and we can start taking note of who wants to work on what, and we'll send a formal announcement about the upcoming papers pretty soon. We have 11 minutes left, so we can take more questions if you have them. Steve, that might be Steve Woodward, I'm not quite sure, is willing to help, so we will also obviously call on you. And yes, the SLA documents are coming up, and they're important for our audience. That is one of the most frequent questions asked cloud adopters is what am I supposed to look for in cloud service agreements proposed by providers. That's exactly why we wrote that paper fairly early in the history of the CSCC, as well as the companion paper on what you should accept, because basically you don't have a choice and everyone offers the same thing, versus what you should negotiate. There we go. I can leave it, dangling for a few seconds in order to see if any of the other people have questions. And Tracy, do you have anything to add?
Oh, well, I want to thank you, Claude, too, for stepping up and helping to transition this into a working group. And personally, I'm excited. I've been working here at OMG for a while now, while helping to run the CSCC, and I think by bringing this closer to OMG, some interesting things are going to happen that we might not have even given thought to yet. So I'm excited to see what's down the road here, and we still continue to add new member organizations. It's amazing, and we've been kind of quiet the last couple months, as we've been working on the transition, but still people are joining left and right because they're finding the papers. And so I'm looking forward to the next steps here, and thank you, Claude, and everybody who's dialed in. Because I imagine the people that are dialed in today are that core group of folks that have helped us to write these. So.
Right, but I think we can all be very proud. We can all be very proud, all like 45 people on the call right now, of the work we've done over the past several years. Some of our papers have been downloaded thousands of times. The practical guide in particular, I don't remember what the latest download numbers were, but it's like more than 10,000 or something like that. So we've really had an impact. We can continue to have the impact. The transition is being sort of engineered by us in order to make sure we continue this impact. One of the things that's going to happen in particular is, since we're now going to present our draft papers to OMG task forces, and we'll present them to the Mars task force for approval, but we'll probably also go in front of other task forces to inform them when things are relevant to them. We're going to get more feedback and more involvement by some people who perhaps had never thought of being involved in that. So we might have members of the Analysis and Design Task Force of the OMG, or some members of the Government Information Sharing Task Force, etc., who are suddenly going to take an interest in what we're doing, because they're going to have more access to us and more abilities to interact with us, through me in particular. And therefore, that's going to give us, not only maybe ideas for new papers or input into the revisions for other papers, but also more eyes on the papers during the review process. And that really brings up some new potential for enhancing what we've done. Okay, so thank you all. I think we're done because I don't see new questions. I see just reinforcement, positive stuff that makes me feel good. Thank you. We look forward for further announcements, and maintain your commitment to us. We're going to continue to do some great work. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of the day.
Thank you.